Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her face against the cool metal of the observation window, watching the stars that filled the night sky above the Colorado mountains. Most people saw beauty in those distant lights. Sarah saw war. 23 years ago, the galaxy had torn itself apart. 3 massive alien empires fought each other across hundreds of star systems. The Kraxan Empire conquered worlds with their war fleets. The Veltar Collective built massive machines that turned planets into factories. The Ethereal Dominion used mind powers to control entire populations. Each side wanted to rule everything. Earth knew about this war because humans were good at listening. While the aliens fought, Earth's best scientists built secret radio telescopes and quantum computers. They hid these machines deep underground, in places like the facility where Sarah worked. Every day she translated alien messages and watched the war consume the galaxy. The basement levels beneath NORAD held Earth's greatest secret. Row after row of computers processed alien communications. Engineers studied captured alien technology from crashed scout ships. Military strategists mapped the movements of fleets that could destroy entire solar systems. But Earth's leaders had made one choice that kept humanity alive. They stayed out of the war. Dr. Chen, you need to see this. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez appeared at her elbow holding a data tablet. His face looked pale in the blue glow of the monitoring screens. Sarah took the tablet and read the energy readings. Her stomach dropped. How far out? 6 months, maybe less. 3 Kraxan dreadnoughts and about 40 smaller ships. They're moving fast, but their energy signatures show massive damage. Someone hurt them badly. Sarah walked through the corridors of the facility, past rooms where linguists worked to understand alien languages and physicists tried to figure out how alien engines worked. The war had taught humanity many things, but the most important lesson was simple. Stay small, stay quiet, and stay alive. Earth had advantages the aliens didn't know about. While the 3 empires spent decades fighting, humans spent those same decades learning. They discovered that alien technology relied too much on computers and not enough on human creativity. They learned that alien tactics worked well against other aliens but had weaknesses a clever human could exploit. Most importantly, Earth learned how to hide. The planet's electromagnetic signature was masked by a network of satellites that made Earth look like an empty, resource-poor world. The alien empires ignored Earth because their sensors told them nothing valuable existed in the Sol system. General Patricia Hayes met Sarah in the main command center. The older woman had gray hair and tired eyes, but her voice stayed steady when she spoke. How bad is it, Doctor? Bad enough that they're running to a system they think is empty, Sarah replied. The Kraxans don't retreat unless they've lost something important. My guess is another empire hit one of their major fleets. On the main screen, a tactical display showed the approaching ships. Each Kraxan dreadnought carried enough firepower to turn Earth's surface into glass. The smaller ships could level entire cities. But the energy readings told a different story. These weren't conquerors coming to claim a new world. These were survivors looking for a place to hide. What do we know about Kraxan military doctrine? General Hayes asked. Sarah pulled up files on her tablet. They're straightforward fighters. They believe in overwhelming force and direct confrontation. They don't expect resistance from species they consider primitive. The problem is that they also don't negotiate with species they consider primitive. Dr. James Wu, Earth's leading expert on alien psychology, joined the conversation. The Kraxans have a rigid hierarchy based on military strength. They respect power and despise weakness. If they're coming here, they probably expect us to surrender immediately. And if we don't surrender, the general asked, they'll try to make an example of us, Dr. Wu replied. Kraxan culture doesn't allow for the possibility that a weaker species might successfully resist them. Sarah thought about the past 23 years. While the aliens fought their war, Earth had not been idle. Human engineers had built weapons that combined alien technology with human innovation. Earth's military had trained for a war they hoped would never come. Scientists had developed defensive systems that could protect cities from orbital bombardment. But none of that would matter if humanity made the wrong choice in the next 6 months. What are our options? General Hayes asked. We could try to stay hidden, Sarah said. Keep the masking satellites active and hope they don't look too closely at Earth. Or, the general prompted, or we prepare for the possibility that they'll find us anyway. The Kraxans are desperate. Desperate people make mistakes, but they also take risks they wouldn't normally take. Dr. Wu nodded. If they discover that Earth has been hiding advanced technology, they'll see it as a threat. The Kraxan Empire doesn't tolerate potential rivals. Sarah looked at the tactical display again. The approaching ships represented decades of alien military development. Their crews had fought in battles across the galaxy. They had weapons and technology that could destroy Earth without effort, but they were also wounded, tired, and far from home. They expected to find an empty system where they could repair their ships and plan their next move. Instead, they would find a species that had spent 23 years preparing for exactly this moment. General, there's something else, Sarah said. The other empires will be watching what happens here. If the Kraxans establish a base in our system, the Veltar Collective and the Ethereal Dominion will eventually follow. Earth won't be able to stay hidden much longer. The command center filled with the quiet sounds of computers processing data and staff members working at their stations. Earth's secret facility had monitored the Galactic War for over 2 decades, but now that war was coming to humanity's doorstep. General Hayes looked at the tactical display for a long moment. Dr. Chen, I want you to prepare a complete briefing on Kraxan military capabilities. Dr. Wu, I need psychological profiles of their leadership caste. We're going to assume they'll find Earth, and we're going to assume they won't leave peacefully. What? About the masking satellites? Sarah asked. We'll keep them active as long as possible, but we're going to start preparing for the alternative. The general turned to face the main screen. For 23 years, we've watched this war tear apart the galaxy. We've learned everything we could about these aliens while they ignored us completely. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a tone Sarah had never heard before. They're about to learn something about humans. The next 6 months would determine whether Earth remained a hidden observer of galactic events or became an active participant in shaping the galaxy's future. The Kraxan Empire had ruled through military might for centuries. They had conquered dozens of species and destroyed anyone who challenged their authority, but they had never fought humans before. Sarah looked out at the stars one more time, knowing that some of those distant lights belonged to the approaching fleet. The galaxy's war was finally coming to Earth, and humanity would have to decide what kind of species they wanted to be. The age of hiding was almost over. War Prime Thekvar stood on the bridge of his flagship and stared at the blue planet that filled the main view screen. His massive frame, covered in the ceremonial battle armor of the Kraxan Empire, cast a shadow over the navigation console. Fresh scars marked his gray skin, souvenirs from the battle that had destroyed half his fleet. Energy readings, Sub-Commander, he growled in the harsh Kraxan language. Minimal technological signatures, War Prime. Primitive electromagnetic emissions consistent with an early industrial civilization. No orbital defenses detected. No military or spacecraft. Sub-Commander Vextar consulted his instruments with the efficiency of a career military officer. The planet appears to be inhabited by a pre-spaceflight species. Thekvar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. After losing 17 dreadnoughts to the Veltar Collective's new quantum weapons, his remaining fleet needed time to repair and regroup. This primitive world would provide both resources and a temporary base of operations. Commence standard. Occupation protocols, he ordered. Land sufficient forces to secure the major population centers. Establish a command post on the largest continental mass. These primitives will provide labor for our repairs. The Kraxan Empire had conquered 47 worlds using exactly this approach. Overwhelming force, rapid occupation, immediate subjugation. Primitive species always surrendered when faced with superior technology. It was a universal constant. 3 hours later, the first Kraxan dropships descended through Earth's atmosphere. Sarah Chen watched the alien ships approach from the emergency command center that had been activated beneath the Rocky Mountains. Every screen showed incoming craft, large troop transports, smaller attack fighters, and engineering vessels designed to establish forward bases. Confirmed landings in North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. They're targeting major cities just like the simulations predicted. General Hayes stood beside the main tactical display, watching red dots appear across the map of Earth. Any demands or communications? Yes, ma'am. Standard Kraxan occupation. Broadcast on multiple frequencies. They're ordering immediate surrender of all military forces and compliance with Kraxan authority. Response time? The general asked. They expect acknowledgement within 1 local hour. Sarah felt her heart racing as she watched the invasion begin. 23 years of preparation would be tested in the next few hours. Earth's hidden defenses remained inactive, still disguised as civilian infrastructure. The masking satellites continued to hide Earth's true technological capabilities. To the Kraxans, this looked exactly like every other primitive world they had conquered. The first Kraxan troops to land outside Denver expected to face frightened civilians and perhaps some ineffective resistance from local military forces. Instead, they found empty streets and buildings that seemed abandoned. Squad leader Carthex emerged from his transport pod and surveyed the human city through his combat helmet's sensors. The architecture was primitive but functional. The technology levels matched their pre-landing scans. These humans should be cowering in fear or gathering to surrender. Spread formation. Secure the administrative center, he commanded his 20-soldier squad. The Kraxans moved through the streets with the confidence of a species that had conquered dozens of worlds. The attack came from 3 directions simultaneously. Human soldiers emerged from concealed positions that Kraxan sensors had failed to detect. They carried weapons that looked primitive, but fired energy beams that cut through Kraxan battle armor like it was made of cloth. The humans moved with a speed and coordination that caught the aliens completely off guard. Carthex watched half his squad fall in the first 30 seconds of combat. His remaining soldiers returned fire, but the humans had already disappeared into buildings and maintenance tunnels that honeycombed the city. Command, this is Squad 7. We are under attack by organized military forces. Repeat, the primitives have advanced weapons and are offering significant resistance. Similar reports flooded Kraxan communications networks from landing sites across Earth. What should have been a simple occupation was turning into a complex military operation. War Prime. Thekvar received the reports with growing disbelief. Subcommander, verify our pre-landing intelligence. Confirmed, War Prime. All scans indicated primitive technology levels. No orbital defenses, no energy weapons, no advanced communication systems. Then explain how these primitives are destroying my landing forces. Before Vextar could respond, new alarms began sounding across the flagship's bridge. War Prime, we're detecting multiple energy signatures rising from the planet's surface. Trajectory indicates targeting solutions on our orbital positions. On the main screen, streaks of light began ascending from Earth toward the Kraxan fleet. The energy readings didn't match any known primitive weapon system. Evasive maneuvers, Thekvar shouted. All ships, combat formation. The first wave of Earth's surface-to-orbit missiles struck 3 Kraxan destroyers before the aliens could react. The weapons combined human engineering with technology reverse-engineered from alien crashes over the past 2 decades. They penetrated Kraxan shields and detonated inside the ship's hulls. Dr. Wu monitored the battle from Earth's command center. Their tactics are exactly what we predicted. Overwhelming force against what they assumed was a helpless target. They're not adapting to organized resistance. How long until they start orbital bombardment? General Hayes asked. Their doctrine calls for ground occupation first. Orbital bombardment is a last resort because it destroys the infrastructure they want to capture. But if we keep inflicting casualties, they'll escalate. Sarah watched the tactical displays showing human forces engaging Kraxan troops across 6 continents. Earth's military had spent years studying alien tactics and developing countermeasures. Human soldiers used terrain and buildings in ways the aliens hadn't anticipated. Earth's weapons targeted weaknesses in Kraxan armor and technology that the aliens didn't know they had. But humanity's greatest advantage was something no alien empire had ever encountered: Every human on Earth was a potential soldier. The Kraxans expected centralized resistance from organized military units. Instead, they faced attacks from scientists who had spent decades studying alien technology, engineers who knew how to turn civilian infrastructure into weapons, and ordinary citizens who refused to surrender their world to invaders. In Tokyo, a team of electronics engineers used the city's power grid to create electromagnetic pulses that disabled Kraxan equipment. In London, archaeologists led alien troops into the underground tunnels they knew better than anyone. In Sao Paulo, medical students used their knowledge of biology to identify vulnerabilities in Kraxan physiology. War Prime Thekvar watched his invasion force take casualties at a rate he had never experienced. These primitives fought with a creativity and determination that violated every assumption about pre-spaceflight civilizations. Sub-Commander, what is our current force strength? 60% and declining, War Prime. Ground forces report that human resistance is increasing rather than diminishing. They appear to be coordinating their attacks across multiple continents. Thekvar's mandibles clicked in frustration. The Kraxan Empire had rules for dealing with primitive species. Those rules assumed that primitives would recognize superior force and submit to inevitable conquest. These humans seemed to operate by different rules entirely. War Prime, incoming communication from the planet's surface. The humans are requesting a ceasefire for negotiations. Thekvar almost laughed. After inflicting significant casualties on his forces, these primitives wanted to negotiate. The request demonstrated their fundamental misunderstanding of Kraxan culture. The Empire did not negotiate with inferior species. Transmit standard conquest terms, complete surrender, immediate compliance with Kraxan authority, cessation of all resistance. They have 1 local hour to respond. Sarah read the Kraxan terms and handed the communication device back to Lieutenant Rodriguez. Send our response. What should I tell them? The lieutenant asked. Sarah looked at General Hayes, who nodded. Tell them no. The single-word response reached the Kraxan flagship 18 minutes later. War Prime Thekvar stared at the communication, for several long moments unable to process what he was reading. In the entire history of the Kraxan Empire, no primitive species had ever refused surrender terms. These humans were going to pay dearly for their defiance. Captain Maria Santos crouched behind the fallen tree trunk and checked her weapon's energy levels. The modified plasma rifle hummed quietly, its human-built cooling system far more efficient than the original Kraxan design. Around her, 12 other fighters waited in the dense Amazon rainforest, invisible to the alien patrol moving along the river below. The Kraxans had been on Earth for 6 weeks. Their initial confidence had turned to frustrated anger, as human resistance proved far more effective than anyone had expected. The aliens controlled the landing zones and some major cities, but they were learning that holding territory on Earth meant dealing with humans who knew every forest, desert, mountain, and urban landscape better than any off-world invader possibly could. Target acquired, whispered Sergeant Kim through the communication device. 12 hostiles, standard patrol formation. They're following the river just like the intelligence reports predicted. Maria smiled grimly. Kraxan military doctrine relied on controlling transportation routes and establishing predictable patrol patterns. It worked well against other organized military forces. It worked poorly against humans who treated every battle as a puzzle to solve, rather than a contest of pure firepower. Execute on my mark, she said quietly. The Amazon offered perfect cover for the kind of warfare humans excelled at: patience, creativity, and intimate knowledge of the environment. The Kraxan patrol moved through the rainforest with the heavy confidence of superior technology. Their sensors could detect most forms of life, and their armor could withstand primitive projectile weapons. What their equipment couldn't account for was human ingenuity, combined with 23 years of studying alien technology. Maria's fighters had spent 3 weeks preparing this ambush. They knew exactly where the patrol would walk, which trees provided the best cover, and how to mask their heat signatures from Kraxan sensors. Most importantly, they knew that Kraxan battle armor had a critical weakness. The joints needed flexible, material that couldn't be as heavily armored as the main plates. "Mark," Maria whispered. The attack lasted 47 seconds, 12 shots from human plasma rifles, each aimed at armor joints that would disable rather than kill, smoke grenades that confused Kraxon sensors, capture nets that tangled alien legs and arms. By the time the smoke cleared, the entire patrol was unconscious or immobilized. "Prisoners secured," Sergeant Kim reported. "No casualties on our side." Maria approached the captured aliens with a mixture of respect and determination. The Kraxons were formidable opponents, but they fought according to rules that humans didn't always follow. Earth's resistance forces had learned that capturing alien soldiers provided more long-term value than simply killing them. Meanwhile, in the frozen wilderness of northern Alaska, Dr. James Wu led a different kind of resistance operation. His team included linguists, psychologists, and communication specialists who were waging war with words instead of weapons. "The intercepted communications confirm our psychological analysis," Dr. Wu told his team via encrypted radio. "Kraxon culture has no framework for dealing with prolonged resistance from a primitive species. Their warriors are experiencing something equivalent to cognitive dissonance." Dr. Lisa Chen, Sarah's younger sister and an expert in alien linguistics, decoded the latest batch of Kraxon military communications. "They're referring to humans as aberrant primitives and anomalous species. Their command structure is requesting guidance from the home fleet because our behavior doesn't match any of their previous conquest experiences." "What kind of guidance are they requesting?" Dr. Wu asked. "Permission to use increasingly aggressive tactics, but there's resistance within their own command structure. Some Kraxon officers are arguing that humans might not be as primitive as initially assessed." This information found its way to resistance cells across Earth within hours. Human communications networks, disguised as civilian internet traffic, carried tactical updates and strategic intelligence to every continent. The Kraxons could monitor human transmissions, but they couldn't decode the seemingly innocuous messages that actually contained detailed military information. In the Australian outback, Aboriginal trackers led Kraxon patrols into ambushes that had been prepared weeks in advance. The aliens' sensors could detect human technology, but they couldn't predict the behavior of people who had lived in harmony with harsh environments for thousands of years. Tommy Namajira crouched beside a waterhole that looked completely natural, but had been carefully prepared as a trap. The water contained microscopic machines that would disable Kraxon equipment without harming the aliens themselves. Surrounding rocks had been positioned to create blind spots where human fighters could remain invisible until the moment of attack. "They're coming," his partner Sarah whispered. 3 vehicles, probably 30 soldiers." Tommy nodded. His ancestors had fought against invaders before, using knowledge of the land that no outsider could match. The same principles that had allowed Aboriginal people to survive in the desert for millennia now served to confuse and frustrate aliens who expected primitive humans to fight like primitive humans. The Kraxon vehicles approached the waterhole, exactly as predicted. Their sensors detected nothing unusual about the natural formation. Their tactical systems identified it as an optimal position for refueling and rest. What happened next would be reported to Kraxon Command as another inexplicable, tactical failure against aberrant human resistance. Similar scenes played out across Earth's surface. In the Himalayas, mountain climbers used their knowledge of high-altitude conditions to disable Kraxon aircraft that couldn't handle the thin atmosphere and unpredictable weather patterns. In the Sahara Desert, Tuareg guides led alien patrols into sandstorms that grounded their technology, while human fighters moved freely through terrain they had known since childhood. But the most significant development occurred in Earth cities, where millions of humans had decided that cooperation with the invaders was not an option. In New York, construction workers used their knowledge of the city's infrastructure to create a network of hidden passages that allowed resistance fighters to move throughout Manhattan without ever appearing on Kraxon sensors. The aliens controlled the streets and major buildings, but humans controlled the spaces between the spaces. Elena Rodriguez coordinated resistance activities from a hidden command center built inside the subway system. The former transit engineer, had spent 15 years maintaining New York's underground infrastructure. Now she used that knowledge to turn the entire subway network into a military asset. Team 7, report status, she said into her communicator. Power grid modifications. Complete. When you give the signal, we can shut down electricity to any district in the city while maintaining power to our own positions. Team 12, what's your situation? Water system taps are installed. We can monitor Kraxon communications through their base's plumbing connections. They're using our water supply to cool their equipment, and they don't know we've turned every pipe into a listening device. Elena smiled as she reviewed the tactical situation. The Kraxons had established a command base in Midtown Manhattan, believing they controlled the city's most strategic location. They didn't realize that humans had turned the entire urban environment into a weapon. Above ground, normal city life continued under Kraxon occupation. People went to work. Children attended school, and businesses operated under alien supervision. But beneath the surface, 8 million New Yorkers had become part of the largest resistance operation in human history. The psychological impact on Kraxon forces was becoming evident in their communications. Dr. Wu's team intercepted messages that revealed growing frustration and confusion among alien commanders. Translation complete, Dr. Lisa Chen announced during the daily intelligence briefing. Quote, "These humans demonstrate technological capabilities inconsistent with pre-contact assessments. Request immediate revision of species classification. Current tactical doctrine appears inadequate for sustained occupation operations." End quote. General Hayes reviewed the global situation map. Green indicators showed areas under human control. Red showed Kraxon positions, and yellow marked contested zones. After 6 weeks of occupation, the map looked nothing like what Kraxon military planners had expected. "They're strong enough to destroy us if they're willing to destroy the planet," the general observed. "But they want Earth intact, which means they have to fight us on our terms." Sarah Chen joined the briefing via secure communication from her position in the Colorado facility. Intercepted communication suggests the Kraxons are receiving pressure from their home fleet. The other galactic empires are monitoring this situation closely. "What kind of pressure?" General Hayes asked. "The Veltar Collective and Ethereal, Dominion are apparently surprised that Kraxon forces haven't achieved complete victory yet. There's speculation that humans might be receiving outside assistance." Dr. Wu nodded thoughtfully, which means all three empires are recalculating their assumptions about Earth and humanity. We're no longer an unknown factor in galactic politics. Outside, the war continued across every continent and in every environment where humans had learned to live. The Kraxons had expected a quick conquest followed by efficient resource extraction. Instead, they found themselves fighting a species that treated Servawar Prime. Thekvar stood before the holographic display showing casualty reports from across Earth. 3 months of occupation had cost him 40% of his ground forces and half his orbital fleet. The numbers made no sense according to every military manual in the Kraxon Empire. "Sub-Commander, explain to me how primitives with no spaceflight capability have destroyed 18 of our ships." Sub-Commander Vextars, mandibles clicked nervously. "Sir, the humans appear to have developed surface-to-orbit weapons using principles we don't fully understand. Our intelligence suggests they've been studying our technology for decades." "Decades?" Thekvar's voice carried the dangerous tone that preceded executions. "You're telling me these primitives have been watching us?" "Not just us, War Prime. Intercepted communications indicate they've been monitoring all 3 galactic empires. They seem to have detailed knowledge of our tactics, weapons, and military doctrine." Thekvar turned away from the casualty reports and stared out at the Lau, blue planet that had become his personal nightmare. In 90 years of military service, he had never encountered a species that improved its fighting capability while under occupation. Most primitives broke under pressure. These humans seemed to get stronger. "New orders, Sub-Commander. Begin preparation for orbital bombardment of major population centers. If these humans want to fight, we'll show them the price of defying the Kraxon Empire." The decision violated standard occupation protocol, But Thekvar's reputation and career couldn't survive a prolonged stalemate against primitives. Fear would accomplish what military force had failed to achieve. Deep beneath the Himalayan mountains, Dr. Sarah Chen watched the orbital bombardment preparation through Earth's hidden sensor network. The Kraxan fleet was repositioning itself for maximum destructive impact on major cities. Their weapons could turn millions of square kilometers into radioactive wasteland. Time until bombardment commences? General Hayes asked via secure communication. 18 hours, Sarah replied. They're targeting New York, London, Tokyo, Beijing, Mumbai, and Sao Paulo simultaneously. Population in those cities? Approximately 50 million people. The command center fell silent as the implications settled over everyone present. Earth's resistance had been effective, but it had also pushed the Kraxans toward the one tactic that could end human civilization in a matter of hours. General, we need to implement Option 7, Sarah said quietly. Option 7 was the plan nobody wanted to use. For 23 years, Earth's engineers had worked on projects that seemed impossible even by human standards. They had built weapon systems that combined alien technology with human innovation in ways that violated several fundamental laws of physics. Option 7 revealed all of it at once. Confirmed, General Hayes replied. All stations, implement. Option 7, full disclosure of Earth's actual capabilities. Around the world, resistance cells received the authorization they had been waiting for since the invasion began. Hidden facilities powered up weapons that had never been tested in combat. Orbital platforms that had masqueraded as communication satellites revealed their true purpose. And in dozens of underground bunkers, human scientists activated systems that would change everything. The first indication that something had changed came when Kraxan sensors detected energy signatures rising from Earth's surface. But these weren't the primitive missiles they had been fighting for 3 months. These were weapons that operated on principles the aliens had never encountered. War Prime, Subcommander Vextar shouted across the flagship's bridge. Multiple, unknown contacts rising from the planet. Energy readings are off the scale. On the main display, dozens of objects streaked upward from Earth toward the Kraxan fleet. But instead of following ballistic trajectories, they moved like guided missiles, with impossible acceleration rates. Worse, they seemed to be immune to Kraxan defensive systems. Activate all defensive measures. Target those missiles with everything we have. The Kraxan fleet fired thousands of defensive rounds at the approaching weapons. None of them hit their targets. The human missiles weaved through the defensive fire with movements that suggested artificial intelligence far beyond anything a primitive species should possess. The first missile struck the flagship's sister ship, the dreadnought Bone Crusher. Instead of exploding, it penetrated the hull and began emitting a strange energy field. Within minutes, the massive warship systems began failing one by one. What kind of weapon is that? Thekvar demanded. Unknown, War Prime. It appears to be some kind of technological virus. It's rewriting our ship's computer systems. More missiles reached their targets. Each one carried a different type of warhead designed to exploit specific weaknesses in Kraxan technology. Human engineers had spent decades studying alien ships, and they had used that knowledge to create weapons that turned Kraxan strengths into vulnerabilities. But the real shock came when Earth's hidden fleet revealed itself. What the Kraxans had mistaken for civilian satellites and space debris suddenly reconfigured into warships that surrounded the alien fleet. The disguised human vessels moved with precision and coordination that suggested centuries of spacefaring experience. How is this possible? Vextar whispered as he watched 30 human ships take attack positions around the Kraxan fleet. Captain, Jennifer Walsh commanded the lead human vessel from a bridge that looked nothing like the primitive spacecraft the Kraxans expected. Her ship, the Darwin, had been built using technology adapted from all 3 galactic empires. It combined Kraxan firepower, Veltar engineering, and ethereal energy manipulation with human innovation. All ships, this is Darwin Actual. Commence. Operation Checkmate. The human fleet attacked with tactics that confused and overwhelmed the Kraxan commanders. Instead of the straightforward confrontations aliens were used to, Human ships used unpredictable movements and coordinated strikes that exploited gaps in alien formations. More importantly, human weapons were specifically designed to disable, rather than destroy. Earth wanted prisoners, not martyrs. War Prime. Thekvar watched his fleet fall apart around him as human tactics proved superior to Kraxan military doctrine. These weren't primitives using captured alien technology. These were experienced space combatants who had been preparing for this battle for decades. "Sir, incoming communication from the lead human vessel," Vextar reported. "Put it through." Captain Walsh's image appeared on the main screen. She wore the uniform of a military organization that shouldn't exist on a primitive world. Behind her, the bridge of her ship showed technology that combined alien engineering with human innovation. "War Prime Thekvar, I am Captain Jennifer Walsh, of the Earth Defense Fleet. Your invasion of our system is over. You have two choices: surrender your forces and accept prisoner status, or continue fighting and lose everything." Thekvar stared at the human commander. "Impossible. Primitives cannot develop spaceflight capability while under occupation." "We've been spaceflight capable for 30 years, Captain Walsh replied calmly. "We've just been careful about who knew it. Your empire invaded Earth because you thought we were helpless. You were wrong." Around the Kraxan flagship, human ships held attack positions that could destroy the alien fleet in minutes. On Earth's surface, resistance forces had captured or eliminated most of the occupation troops. The invasion, that should have taken days to complete, had turned into a complete disaster for the Kraxan Empire. "You studied us," Thekvar said, understanding finally dawning in his alien mind. "For 23 years, Captain Walsh confirmed. We watched your empire fight the Veltar Collective and the Ethereal Dominion. We learned your tactics, studied your technology, and prepared for the day when the Galactic War would reach Earth. Why didn't you join the war earlier? Because we knew that eventually the war would come to us. And when it did, we wanted to be ready." War Prime Thekvar looked around his bridge at the faces of his surviving crew. The Kraxan Empire had built its reputation on the swift conquest of primitive worlds. That reputation would not survive the news that a primitive species had defeated one of their primary fleets. But there was something else in the human commander's voice that gave him pause. She had mentioned surrender and prisoner status. In Kraxan military culture, defeated enemies were either enslaved or executed. The concept of treating prisoners with dignity was alien to his experience. "What happens to my forces if we surrender?" he asked. "You'll be treated according to Earth's codes of military conduct. Your wounded will receive medical care. You're healthy. Troops will be held in comfortable conditions until the war is over, and you'll have the opportunity to learn about the species you tried to conquer." Thekvar considered the offer. Surrender to a primitive species would normally be unthinkable, but these humans had demonstrated capabilities that forced him to reconsider everything he thought he knew about primitive species. More importantly, they were offering him something no Kraxan military commander had ever experienced: the possibility of survival after defeat. "I need to consult with my staff," he said finally. "You have 1 hour," Captain Walsh replied. "After that, we'll assume you've chosen to continue fighting." As the communication ended, Thekvar realized that the mind Su. 6 months after the failed Kraxan invasion, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of Earth's first official starship, the Enterprise. Through the reinforced windows, she could see the massive construction yards that humans had, built in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. What had once been empty space now buzzed with activity as human engineers worked alongside former Kraxan prisoners to build a fleet that would change the galaxy forever. The sight still amazed her, even though she had helped plan it. "Quite a view, isn't it?" War Prime Thekvar joined her at the window. The massive alien wore simple work clothes instead of his former battle armor. 3 months of working with humans had changed him in ways Sarah was still trying to understand. "Your people are fast learners," Sarah replied. "The new ship designs are impressive." "Human engineering combined with Kraxan military systems," Thekvar agreed. "But the real innovation comes from your scientists. They see possibilities that never occurred to us." It was true. During the months following the Kraxan surrender, Earth's engineers had not simply copied alien technology, they had improved it, combining the best aspects of Kraxan, Veltar, and ethereal designs with human creativity. The resulting ships were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. More importantly, Earth had done something that no galactic power had attempted in centuries. They had turned enemies into allies. Status report from Captain Walsh, Dr. James Wu announced as he joined them on the observation deck. As Earth's new director of galactic relations, he coordinated the diplomatic and military aspects of humanity's emergence as a spacefaring civilization. The key reconnaissance fleet has completed its survey of the Veltar border systems, he continued. Confirmed reports of massive refugee populations fleeing the war zones. Estimated 15 million displaced beings across 12 systems. Sarah nodded, grimly. While Earth had been dealing with the Kraxan invasion, the Galactic War had continued to devastate entire star systems. The Veltar Collective's industrial war machine consumed planets to feed their military production. The ethereal dominions, psychic weapons left populations mentally broken and unable to function. And the Kraxan Empire's response had been to destroy anything they couldn't recapture. Any response to our peace proposal? She asked. All three empires have agreed to send representatives to the Sol system for negotiations, Dr. Wu replied. But their messages suggest they expect Earth to choose sides, rather than end the war. Thekvar's mandibles clicked in what humans had learned was Kraxan laughter. They still don't understand what they're dealing with. Even after what happened to my fleet, they think of Earth as a useful but limited ally. What would you do if you were still War Prime? Sarah asked. I would be terrified, Thekvar replied honestly. Humans don't fight like any species the galaxy has encountered. You don't seek to dominate your enemies. You seek to understand them. And once you understand them, you convert them. It was an accurate assessment. Earth's approach to the captured Kraxan forces had shocked both the prisoners and the rest of the galaxy. Instead of execution or enslavement, humans had offered education, medical care, and the opportunity to help build something better than the endless war that had consumed their lives. The results had exceeded everyone's expectations. Kraxan warriors, who had spent decades conquering other species, now worked enthusiastically on projects designed to help war refugees. Engineers who had built weapons of mass destruction now focused on developing faster-than-light communication systems that could coordinate relief efforts across multiple star systems. Captain Jennifer Walsh entered the observation deck carrying a data tablet with the latest intelligence reports. Her Earth defense fleet had grown from 30 disguised ships to over 200 vessels crewed by humans and former Kraxans working together. Update from the border systems, she announced. The Veltar Collective has started withdrawing industrial operations from their frontier worlds. Intelligence suggests they're consolidating resources for a major offensive against the ethereal dominion. Estimated timeline? Dr. Wu asked. 6 to 8 months. If the offensive succeeds, the Collective will control enough territory to build weapons that could end the war decisively. If it fails, the ethereal dominion will have enough psychic energy sources to dominate both remaining empires. Sarah studied the tactical display that Captain Walsh activated. The Galactic War had reached a critical point where one final battle might determine the fate of hundreds of star systems. Billions of lives hung in the balance. What's our fleet strength? She asked. 400 ships operational with another 600 under construction. Mixed human Kraxan crews on all vessels. Combat effectiveness is significantly higher than pure human or pure Kraxan crews. Thekvar nodded approvingly. Your species has a talent for bringing out the best in others. My warriors fight better beside humans than they ever did for the Empire. Because we're fighting for something different, Sarah replied. Not conquest, not domination, not revenge. We're fighting to give the galaxy a choice it's never had before. The choice Earth offered was revolutionary in its simplicity. Peace through cooperation rather than victory through conquest. Human diplomats had spent months developing proposals that would end the Galactic War by addressing the underlying causes, rather than simply determining a winner. The Kraxan Empire fought because their culture equated military conquest with personal worth. Earth's proposal offered them a different path to honor, protection of civilians, and rebuilding of war-torn worlds. The Veltar Collective fought because they believed only absolute technological efficiency could bring order to the galaxy. Earth's proposal showed them that organic creativity could solve problems that pure logic couldn't address. The ethereal Dominion fought because they saw chaos in the minds of other species and believed only psychic unity could bring peace. Earth's proposal demonstrated that diversity of thought was a strength rather than a weakness. Incoming transmission from the Veltar Collective, Captain Walsh announced. Their negotiation ship has arrived at the edge of the Sol system. Sarah felt her heart rate increase. This would be the first direct contact between Earth and the Collective since humanity had revealed its true capabilities. The aliens' response would determine whether diplomacy was possible or whether Earth would have to impose peace through military force. "Put them through," she said. The holographic display activated to show a being that looked like a combination of organic tissue and mechanical components. Veltar individuals were more machine than biological, with artificial intelligence networks that connected their thoughts across vast distances. "I am Designate Prime 7 of the Veltar Collective," the alien announced in a voice that sounded like multiple speakers working in perfect harmony. "We come to assess the efficiency parameters of your proposed solution to galactic conflict optimization." Dr. Wu stepped forward as Earth's chief negotiator. "Welcome to the Sol system, Designate Prime 7. We appreciate your willingness to consider alternatives to continued warfare. Clarification required. Our analysis indicates that Earth-human military capabilities exceed initial assessment parameters. Cracks in fleet defeat probability calculations were flawed. New data requires recalibration of strategic assumptions." Sarah smiled slightly. The Veltar Collective communicated like living computers, but their message was clear. They had underestimated humanity and wanted to understand what they were really dealing with. "We'd be happy to provide a complete briefing on Earth's capabilities and intentions," Dr. Wu replied. "But first, we'd like to show you something." Captain Walsh activated a different display that showed the asteroid belt construction yards. Dozens of ships moved through space in coordinated patterns, with human and Kraxan crews working together on projects that would have been impossible for either species alone. "Efficient cooperation between previously hostile entities," Designate Prime 7 observed. "Productivity levels exceed predicted values for either species operating independently." "That's the foundation of our peace proposal," Sarah explained. "The Galactic War continues because each empire tries to solve problems using only their own capabilities. But cooperation between different species produces better results than domination by any single group. Hypothesis requires testing through practical application," the Veltar representative replied. "Proposal: temporary ceasefire in selected border systems. Human mediators coordinate resource allocation and conflict resolution. Results will determine efficiency of expanded cooperation protocols." It was exactly the opening Earth had hoped for. The Veltar Collective was willing to test human diplomatic methods on a limited scale. If the experiment succeeded, it could provide a model for ending the Galactic War. "We accept your proposal," Dr. Wu said formally. "Earth will provide medical aid, engineering support, and neutral mediation services to all parties in the selected systems." As the communication ended, Sarah realized that humanity had just taken the first step toward becoming something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that ended wars instead of winning them. "What happens next?" Thekvar asked. "To be